This is Bigger Questions with your host, Robert Martin.
Welcome to Bigger Questions. Today's big question is Jesus for Asia. Now, we usually record Bigger Questions before a live audience in Melbourne's CBD, but we weren't able to get our guest before a live audience today, but I'm sure you'll enjoy what we have in store. My guest is Dr. KK Yeo. KK is a Chinese scholar born in Malaysia, educated in the US, and currently teaching in Chicago, Beijing, and Jerusalem. He is the author of 35 books and has a particular interest in the dialogue between cultures of antiquity and modern times. KK is in Australia at the invitation of Overseas Council Australia, and he joins me now. So, KK, welcome to Bigger Questions.
Thank you. Glad to be here, Rob.
That's great. Now, you teach in Jerusalem, New York, and Beijing. Now, I take it you don't do this at the same time.
Of course not.
No. Do you get confused where you are at those times?
You're right. As far as the clock is concerned, I often have at least two clocks
going
right
on.
Yeah.
So you know.
So
where...
I'm often confused. Yeah.
Okay.
Seriously.
So you're not quite sure what time it is now.
No.
I
don't know what day it is. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yes. Well, this is not either Chicago, Beijing, or Jerusalem. We're in Melbourne today.
Melbourne.
Yes, that's right. You realise that?
Is it near Beijing's time?
Probably. I think it's a bit close to that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, do you have a favourite place where you like to teach, though?
You know, it's funny that you ask these questions because I was born and raised in diaspora. Outside China. My parents are from there.
Okay.
And because of that, I never felt at home in one particular place.
Oh, okay. Right. So you have like a nomadic
years,
existence, so to speak.
Yeah, that nomadic consciousness, they call it that. But over the years, though, I mean, I learned to find homes every place.
Right.
So I can sleep on the airplane, on train stations, or wherever.
Right. Okay.
So a place where you rest is called home.
Right. Okay. So you're a bit of a nomad then, a global nomad, perhaps. Yes. So, KK, as you mentioned, you were born and raised in a Chinese Malaysian context, but you studied and now teach in the United States, and you call Chicago home. That's your home base, yeah? Now, it's common to describe the United States as representing Western culture and China representing Eastern culture. So what are the differences then between Eastern and Western cultures?
There are a lot of differences, actually, between the East and the West. As far as cultures are concerned, we're not simply talking about geographic east or west.
No, and it's beyond language as well.
It's beyond languages. Well, languages has a lot to do with the worldview, the way we express the cultures and so forth. For example, because the Western culture, the root is pretty much from Greek and Romans, so Greco-Roman antiquity cultures. That becomes the foundation of Western cultures. So it's very precise. Is very analytical. That's you can see from the language. But the Eastern cultures, however, the Oriental, the Yin and the Yang, right? That's focused on change rather than the Western of constant as the absolute.
Right.
In the Eastern culture, then it begins with relationship. And if it's relationship, though, it's about change. It's about dynamic relationship, right?
Okay.
That's why when you cross over these two cultures, sometimes you're a bit confused.
Yes. So do you get confused when you travel from east to west, so to speak? Or?
Often do. As you kind of touch down and begin to kind of think about, what is going on in a particular kind of setting, context, then sometimes you don't know whether to use precision or relationship to measure.
So maybe we can use a couple of examples here to sort of flesh this out, this idea. So what's the difference between Eastern and Western sort of ideas of punctuality, for example? So I'm from a Western view, so I would say if you say be there at 10 o'clock, then
it has to be precise.
It has to be 10 o'clock. 1 past 10, you're 1 minute late. So what about in an Eastern context, though?
No, the Eastern context do not count on the watch or the clock to talk about what is punctual.
Right.
It's more like the kairotic, we call it the kairos time.
Okay.
The best ideal opportunity when it arrives, and that usually means that the boss or the important people or the parents or the grandparents, if there is in family kind of occasions, celebrations of party, right? When they arrive, then that's the right time.
That's the right time.
To start.
Even if they're an hour late, then it's...
You have to wait for them.
Okay. What about the idea of queuing then, when you queue? So I'm, again, from a Western perspective, so I'd sort of line up in an orderly line. That's What's that in an Eastern context?
Well, the Eastern context do not like queuing, lining up.
No, okay.
Yeah, I'm a fifth of the 8 children my parents have.
Yeah.
You can imagine every time I have to queue up and the fifth one don't get anything. That's unfair.
Right, okay.
So we just go up together.
Okay, so there's sort of like a mob sort of thing. So how does that affect you when you get on planes then from China?
Well, you can imagine, when we get on plane and all of us would like to go to the front.
Right, and get there as fast as possible. Yeah.
So it may sound rude to the Westerner, but
this
that's
is
how we do things.
Right, yeah. So how do you grasp with that when you engage these different cultures?
Well, you definitely need a balance here. So by contrasting the East and the West, we're not saying that which one is right and which one is wrong.
Yes, that's right.
It's simply saying the balance.
Because there's a danger to think that one culture is superior to another.
No, that's not the way to go.
No.
So therefore, the cross-cultural, often the emphasis, right? The cross-cultural kind of ideal one needs to learn. I.e., you need to know what is the pluses of the Eastern and the pluses of the Western. And it depends on the contextual kind of issues and be able to use both resources.
But does culture change at all, though?
Oh, of course.
Yeah. So
that's the challenge.
Is Eastern and Western culture changing?
Oh, yeah. Traditional Chinese culture is very different from what we have now, the modern Chinese culture. And over a period of times, 2,000, 3,000 years, of course, there is a cross-fertilizations between the East and the West. Yeah, and today we talk about globalizations. Right?
Yes.
That's also bring about those changes.
So what about the role of religion then? Is there a difference in the place of religion in an Eastern or a Western culture?
A lot of similarities. One distinctive difference will be the Jewish sense of monotheism, which is quite distinctive.
Yeah.
And then the traditional Chinese, polytheistic.
So polytheism, multiple
gods.
Yeah.
So it's the Greco-Roman. Yeah.
So religion has a role in both cultures then, you would say?
I would say in all cultures.
Right, in all cultures.
It has been always the kind of driving force for ethics.
Right.
And then for communal life together.
Okay, yeah. So then what about the Christian faith? Would you say that's a Western religion?
Well, the Christian faith is the combination of both East first and then West, in a sense that East would represent that traditional Oriental, the Hebraic culture, and then plus the Greco-Roman, which is the Western civilizations.
Right.
So I would say Christianity, embrace the best of the East and the West.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
So the East, of course, it will be the religious faith, right?
Yeah.
Monotheistic faith.
Yeah.
And then the East here will be the more philosophical, management, practical cultures of Greco-Romans.
But there are some people today who would say that they see Christianity sort of dominate in Western countries, so to speak, and they would assume that therefore it's a Western religion.
That's not quite correct because they are simply focusing on what's after AD 100 later on.
Right.
When Christianity begins to spread among when the Roman Empire. And then it becomes the Western civilizations, right?
Right, yeah.
But before that, Christianity, it's in the Middle East. In terms of geography and worldview.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So technically speaking, it's, Judaism and Christianity is actually a Middle East and Oriental kind of religion.
But even the modern day, though, you'd say that sort of countries that you'd say are Christian, so to speak, in inverted commas, are European countries, North America, perhaps even Australia.
The Christian West, and then the North Atlantic kind of regions, all these are predominantly Christian.
Yeah.
But you see the shifting again of this Christianity in those parts of the world seems to be shrinking, at least in terms of membership, church membership.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's fair even today to talk about Christianity in terms of membership as large as in the Western hemisphere anymore.
Right.
It's not accurate.
So
there are a lot of growth in Africa.
Yep.
A lot of growth in India, China, and South Korea.
Yes. Now, you've written a book called What Does Jerusalem Have to Do with Beijing? So what do you mean by that title?
As playing on what Tertullian, the church father, the philosopher, has asked, what has Athens to do with Jerusalem?
Right, yeah.
So what he's asking, of course, is what has Greek philosophy, Athens, to do with Jerusalem, i.e. The Christian faith or the Bible?
Yeah.
So I play on that a little bit and say that what is Jerusalem, i.e. Christian faith, the Bible, has to do with Beijing, i.e. The Chinese culture.
Yes. Yeah.
So in that book, then I go through various examples in Chinese cultures that are in conversation and in actually agreement with the biblical faith.
Okay. So what sort of things did you discover?
I discovered, for example, Tao, and D-A-O, as Taoism, which is an ancient Chinese school of wisdom traditions. Mm-hmm. It's about the way, the language, the principle, the logic. So I discovered that the Chinese Bible translates the Gospel of John. In the beginning was the Word.
Yes, that's right.
But in Greek, it's in the beginning was the Logos.
Yes.
The Chinese translator translated it as in the beginning was the Tao.
Right.
D-A-O.
Wow. So there's
beautiful translations.
Right. It has the same sort of concept in connotations.
Yes. Yeah.
So then, how do people from a Chinese background then view Jesus? Did they see him as this Tao?
Well, unless they go through some of the biblical texts, although it's still quite foreign for them. Yeah. Partly because of the missionary history, where we were taught that you simply have to, from the English and from the Western kind of perspective, to understand Jesus. After all, in a lot of the Chinese churches, the Jesus portrait, is the blonde hair, blue eyes. Seriously, Jesus.
This is what missionaries brought to China.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what I'm doing in China is to teach them that's a distorted portrait for the Chinese.
Okay. Yeah.
Culture.
So what sort of portrait of Jesus do they see?
They need to see Jesus in the cultural lens, in the language of the Chinese people. Then they're able to discover, wow, Jesus can connect to the Chinese culture easily, through Tao, through the Confucianist understanding of love. And indeed, the Chinese Bible, again, once they translate the divine love, the agape, that concept, they use the Confucianist word to translate that.
So does someone then have to reject Eastern culture to become a Christian?
I don't think it's a total kind of rejection. For biblical readers of the Bible, then you need to discern which part of your cultures becomes a hindrance for you to understand this Jesus, which one can be used as a lens helpfully for you to appreciate Jesus. It's on a continuum of the negatives through the positives, and kind of find it, which one would work.
Yeah. So there's some parts of the biblical story, so to speak, that Eastern culture embraces or can understand, but there are other parts which perhaps are more difficult. Yeah. So, for example, maybe ancestor worship. Yeah. Now, that's a key religion in Eastern culture, so to speak. So how does Jesus inform that? Yeah.
Well, ancestor worship is a very complex cultural systems in China. Yeah. So I wrote a book on that, and arguing that you need to go through that whole list and understand. For example, respecting your elders. Of course, that's a biblical virtue. Yeah. Teaching even you need to respect, but it's not a blind kind of obedience to your parents or your elders. Yeah. Then we need to talk about then any harmful, negative things that we need to reject. Yes. For example, the fear about not doing ancestor worship, and then the Chinese believe that the evil ghost, the evil spirit would come and haunt you. Yeah. That's based on fear. Yeah. And the gospel here has a lot to speak to the Chinese people then, that, fear cannot control us. Yes. Because what Jesus do is to bring us trust, love, rather than fear. Yeah. And that freedom ones have, love casts out fear. Yes. Yes. So that portion of the ancestor worship, I would say we need to cast it out. Yes. We need to reject it. So I'm saying that in ancestor worship too, we should not simply give a yes or no simple answer. Right. We have to help the community wrestle with the conscience, wrestle with the cultural values, and free people out of fear, and kind of push them, upward into a more spiritual kind of respecting the elders. Now,
in 2014, the famed atheist Richard Dawkins once tweeted, how thoughtful of God to arrange matters so that wherever you happen to be born, the local religion always turns out to be the true one. So what do you make of what Richard Dawkins said?
But is it true though? I mean, so that's my first question.
That's what he
right.
suggests.
He suggests that.
He's suggesting this is true. That so your religion that you have is only a matter of where you're born.
Yeah, no, that's not true in my own experience.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm asking. Is that true? Because from my own experience, I was born and raised into a Confucianist family. But very early on in my school days, like 8 or 9, I began to doubt. Even Confucianism.
Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah.
Even though as an ethical systems, it's great, I would say. But in terms of the kind of spiritual quest, looking for something that is beyond, the human dimension of life on earth here.
Yeah.
I'm looking for something else.
Yeah.
Fulfillment of my heart. I don't think Confucianism is helpful.
Right.
That's why I began to explore then Buddhism.
Right.
I thought Buddhism would give me a better response to my questions.
Yeah, you had big questions, I said. Bigger questions.
The bigger questions. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. And then I explore into, Judaism and Greek and Roman philosophy and so forth.
Wow.
So even that, from my personal experience, I don't agree with him.
So they're pretty big questions to be asking as an 8-year-old. Mm-hmm. What did you find were the problems with Confucianism?
Well, it took me, I have to say, 7 or 8 years, though. I mean, to begin to work out certain things. Confucianism is ethical, kind of moral. I wouldn't even call religion. It's a system.
Yeah.
It's more like Aristotelian kind of ethics.
Yeah.
It has great things to say about human relationship.
Yeah.
But it's not able to address the questions: where am I from?
Yeah.
Where am I going?
Yeah.
What is the meaning of life? So all these big questions, I mean, it did not address. That's why I have to look elsewhere.
And so, tell us about your quest. What did you find?
Of course, from 8 or 9 years old onward, in all the courses that I'm taking, even in primary and secondary school and high school, I mean, these are the courses give me the inquiry, looking into. So I love mathematics. I love physics. I love outer space, astronomy, that kind of things. Those are helpful, but still couldn't answer completely my question. It is in an Anglican mission is set up high school. That there is a scripture union organizations that help Christians and non-Christians to do Bible study together.
Okay.
So my Christian friends then brought me to that group. Yeah.
So you joined them?
I joined them to argue with them. For 3 months.
Okay.
I'm not convinced that.
What were you arguing about?
Well, I'm stubborn, and I don't think Christian friends they are strong. They are simply intellectually weak, psychologically weak. That's why they need a savior. Yeah, that's my assumption. So I argue with them. But then what convinced me, though, is not in terms of argument. What they convinces me is the love, the relational aspect that they show me. They care for me.
Right.
They're able to accept me, even though I disagree with them.
Yeah.
So it begins to open up for me to think about personhood, about human dignity, about who we are. And then later on I found out that, wow, each individuals, human beings are created in the image of God.
Yeah.
That's mind-boggling.
Yeah.
I could never imagine that we human beings are created, in the image of God, which is the glorious image, of course, right? I thought,
what made you so surprised at that?
I think inside me, I think also inside each one of us, that we want to be loved, we want to be respected, we want to be cared for, right? I.e., if we treat one another as less than human, I mean, that's the worst treatment we can give to one another.
Right.
But because they care for me. So even though I have questions about who Jesus is and all the biblical kind of questions that I have, that becomes secondary. So as I then study or read the Bible, then I begin to pay attention to the personhood of God.
Yeah.
Who is this Trinitarian God?
Yeah.
Why this community of three in one?
Wow.
That they are actually not in terms of logic, cold logic, but in terms of love.
Yeah.
That 3 in 1, 1 in 3.
So
it's a community.
Did that resonate with your sort of Eastern cultural
very much so
understanding?
Yeah, because the Confucians, the ethics is all about that community.
Yes, and so you saw a community in the Trinity.
So it's kind of funny, right?
Yeah.
In one sense, that I don't truly trust the ethics of Confucius, but on the other hand, the language system that they help me to
grasp with the
make
Bible.
Connection with Christianity.
But you went from arguing with the Christians to then
slowly,
to seeing that actually this might work for you. Was there a particular moment where you felt like this is actually for me, or that convinced you about Jesus?
Well, in the book of Revelations, for example, it talks about Jesus being the Alpha and the Omega, which is the first and the last letter of the Greek language.
Yes.
Alphabet. So it's talking about Jesus then is the first, before anything else. Jesus is there. And then the last, after all things have gone away or whatever, he's still there.
Yeah.
So that philosophical understanding of Jesus is indeed this cosmic first and last, and of course in between, that his life and teaching, right, including the cross, death, resurrection, and the coming. So that grounded for me in terms of the meaning of my life, that I have a life story connected to that. So I'm not simply limited to this little boy brought up in Kuching, a small space, but I have a bigger story.
Yeah.
So that curiosity and exploration connected to this cosmic story, this figure, is really, really releasing. Gives me a lot of freedom and hope. About my life, meaning of my life.
Wow, terrific. Well, thanks you for sharing that. So it means that Richard Dawkins' quote there, but where you happen to be born, the local religion turns out to be true. Just isn't true in your own personal.
Isn't true in my own experience.
In your own experience, And I suppose what you've observed in others as well.
That's
as you've gone around the world.
That's right.
Yeah. We're asking Dr. KK Yeo today's big question: is Jesus for Asia? And the Bible speaks about something of this in the last book of the Bible, in the book of Revelation, which we've just talked about. Revelation speaks in a picture language about events in the future. And one image appears in chapter 5 where there is a vision of a lamb who is on a throne, who is deemed worthy to open a scroll with 7 seals. It says, then the creatures around the throne sing a song to the lamb, and in verse 9 say, you are worthy to take the scroll and to open its seals, because you were slain, and with your blood you purchased for God persons from every tribe and language and people and nation. You have made them to be a kingdom and priests to serve our God, and they will reign on the earth. Now, so KK, this is possibly a strange picture language to our ears, our modern ears. But what is meant by these visions? What's the author trying to communicate here?
Well, the book of Revelation uses a lot of symbolic
picture language.
Is because he is trying to describe for us a reality that is above our present reality.
Yes.
So I think that's important to keep in mind.
Yeah.
You can only use music, sound, worship in a different kind of dimension, to understand what God is creating, and at the end would fulfill the consummation piece. So in this text here, the author of Revelation is describing the people that God is saving through Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
It's not simply from Europe or USA or Australia, but it's worldwide.
Yes, well, it says from every tribe and language and people and nation. So he says that he's purchased for God with his blood. So this is when Jesus dies on the cross.
That's right.
That's what the language he's trying to communicate here.
Yeah.
And so what do you then make of this line? So he's purchased for God persons from every tribe and language and people and nation. How do you react to that?
That means the Christian gospel is not only made available, but it is effective in terms of saving anyone from every tribe, every language, every people, and every nation. I.e., universal.
So then, do you think that people will retain their distinctiveness as their tribe or race
Indeed.
in this vision?
Indeed.
Yeah.
So by mentioning the multiple kind of languages or cultures or people groups and so forth, doesn't mean that God at the end would delete all the cultural distinctiveness.
Right.
In fact, it is for the sake of maintaining all the uniqueness in each cultures and language.
Yeah.
So it's a beautiful way for the church to be able to kind of lifting up the uniqueness of each. And yet gluing all in unity through the blood of Christ, through the love of Christ.
Do you think this is a positive thing?
I think this is a positive thing.
Yeah.
Because this is, not buying into homogeneity. Our modern world often want to do, to be the same.
Yeah.
Right. And it's also going against segregations, which in our modern world, we often go for this convenient way of doing things.
Yeah.
Homogeneity or segregation.
So there's true diversity that you see.
True diversity and true unity
Yeah.
in Christ.
So is this different then to a sort of a Buddhist or a Confucian vision of the future?
It's very different. I've never seen any other religious movement talk about like what Revelation here is talking about, affirming the uniqueness and yet talking about that mutuality piece.
And the diversity.
And the diversity, it's just beautiful.
Yeah.
It's hard to do though, so we're not saying it's easy to do. So sometimes the church would not done enough or even fail.
Yep.
Therefore, we need to repent.
Yep.
We need to come to the text again and be washed again and do the repentance. But there's always a hope, eschatological hope, this vision that draw us forward.
Yeah.
This is what the church needs to count on.
So do you think in this vision of the future there will be orderly queues, or will people be sort of milling around?
No, it's going to be messy.
So will it be Eastern or Western culture, do you think?
I think it's in between.
Right. Okay.
I think it's in between, and there'll be flux and changes and shifting and so forth. So the church is always a messy place. Yeah.
So thank you very much for our conversation here today, KK. I just want to wrap up with one final question. So KK, is Jesus for Asia?
Jesus definitely is for Asia, even though I have qualified by saying that Jesus is also for non-Asia. So we probably have to say that Jesus is for the world, Jesus is for Asia, Jesus is for Europe. And then our responsibility is to be able to communicate and interpret well in what ways he is for Asia, for Australian, for Malaysia, and so forth.
Well, thank you very much again for joining us here today, KK. Let me leave you with the Bible's answer to this big question: is Jesus for Asia? From Revelation 5:9-10. And they sang a new song, saying, "You are worthy to take the scroll and to open its seals, because you were slain, and with your blood you purchased for God persons from every tribe and language and people and nation. You have made them to be a kingdom of priests to serve our God, and they will reign on the earth." I look forward to you joining us next time for bigger questions. Thanks again to our guest today, Dr. KK Yeo.
Thank you. Cheers.